I had this moment in my life that everything changed. And what it was I got this show, like a DJ show, where like 4 DJs were playing all this party in Stockton, like a pretty big party too. It was like a couple thousand people or something. And in the middle, like they had this little battle exhibition, and these two little came out there, and like they're just kind of battling each other, and it was kind of I mean, I knew about this stuff, but it's a newer phenomenon. It wasn't like, I mean, there was the New York battles and whatnot, but we didn't really, whatever. And anyway, so we're there, and like these 2 little guys are going, one guy just cutting incredibly fast, and like the other one's like making tones and making songs out of tones and stuff. Like I'm just looking at this going like, these kids are amazing. I mean, if this is what the local kids do, this isn't going to work out too well. And only later did I find out that one was Mixmaster Mike and one was Qbert. But it opened my eyes to the fact that maybe battle DJing is not really my thing. Hey, this is Dan the Automator, Deltron 3030, Handsome Boy Modeling School, Gorillas, Lovage, I don't know. And you're watching Crate Diggers. This is my one nod to beat collecting in my whole life, actually, and it was a big period for me collecting breaks and stuff. So I just had this. I just have this around because to me it kind of like epitomizes the whole idea, not idea of collecting beats, but where it comes and goes. And it's this. These 2 records are probably the most important breaks in hip hop history. Probably more records have been made off of these 2 records. The records I wouldn't necessarily use, but the thing about it is everyone gets it off like the Ultimate Beats and Breaks or something like that, because very few people have both of these records. I mean, I've seen a few in Peaches around, and I don't know if I've ever seen another Substitution around, but I know of a couple of people who have it, but like it's just the combo. It's just like, it doesn't say hip hop history, it says beat guy history. So there you go. Well, I first got into music against my will. I was 3 years old, and my mom and dad started me on violin lessons. So I didn't, not that I minded it, I actually enjoyed it, but I'm saying I didn't really decide to play music or anything like that. It was one of those things that just happened. And I did that for a number of years, about 13 years, I guess. But I was not terrible or anything. I was a fairly decent violin player. I mean, I use strings a lot in my records right now, and I got to attribute that to the violin stuff. And somewhere in the middle of it, I discovered pop and soul music and stuff like that. And that's when my real personal interest and personal discovery of music started to happen. The first album, me and my brother, our parents gave us some money and we bought 2 albums, or 3 albums actually, and I don't remember which one was exactly first. It was all within the same period of time, and we got 3 that I can think of for sure. We got an Earth, Wind & Fire record, we got Chuck Mangione, Feels So Good, and Saturday Night Fever. I started DJing in high school, but before I even started DJing, I was really into records. I would buy all the records I could afford and get my hands on everything I could. Very curious about music and records. In high school, I started discovering the whole thing of DJs and turntables and whatnot. I mean, bands like Run DMC and all that stuff were already out, but actually, for me, it was a record called Do You Like Scratching, Malcolm McLaren and the world famous Supreme Team, that I heard it, and I was like, all right, I see what they're doing. I get this. This is turntables being rubbed, scratched, and part of the reason was that the world famous Supreme Team wasn't really super good at doing it, so it was easier to figure out what they were doing. And from that point, all of the worlds combined between the rap worlds and the turntables and everything, and I was starting to DJ basically. Here is a 45, Unwind Yourself. It is also probably best known for the 900 number. This is a cool one. This is the Last Night Changed It All without the phone in it. It just, the pure beat. My record collection is not nearly as big as it was, and it's not nearly as big as like a lot of my peers. At its height, my record collection probably never really crossed more than 10, 12,000 copies. I don't, maybe a little bit more, but a lot of them were like DJ records and stuff that you would play at club music and stuff, and I wasn't really even using those anymore. So at one point, I remember I smartly, which turned out to be stupidly, gave away like all these like dance and club records and stuff like that, like thousands and thousands of them. I mean, they weren't valuable. I don't regret giving them away, but what happened was every time I went to a thrift store for the next like year, I would just be flipping through my own records trying to find new records, and it was just a pain in the ass. My record collection is probably in about 3 or 4 places. A few here, I don't know, some here, some my parents, some in my studio in New York, and some at like a storage spot. Two storage spots. So I have them at 5 spots. 5 spots. These records are all not organized and not cataloged except for by broad genres. Like there's a soundtrack section, foreign records, and then the rest of it's just records. There's no rhyme or reason to this, so I'm not really going to show it to you for any other reason but to show it to you, and there you go. Some more records and keyboards and records and keyboards. Just for people who actually cared and thought like maybe I was a person who didn't actually have records and was a clown, I would bring a few out. So, I have been collecting for a number of years, and I thought this would be a good small sampling so you could go like, oh yeah, okay, maybe he does have some records. Corey Newhouse. When I met him, he was an intern in college for MCA. I'm trying to make music at this time, and he's trying to become a promo guy in the future, I guess. And he came out to San Francisco once, and he was staying with me at my parents' house. One night he goes like, hey, there's these guys in Davis I pass out records to. I send them to. Is it okay if they come by here and we go out to have dinner together? I'm like, sure, that sounds good to me. And it turned out to be Josh, Shadow, X, Tom, the whole Soul Sides crew basically. I don't know if every single one of them was there, but that's how I met them. And when I met them, they came to my house. And like they saw like the records and the drum machines, and Josh knew who I was, and he's like, hey, you think you can help us? We're trying to make music, so we need a little help recording and getting it together. So I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, we're all just getting started. So that was the beginning of a relationship where like in my parents' basement, I guess we made like Introducing, Preemptive Strike, Melodica, Latyrix, all the Soul Side stuff up to Preemptive, basically. This is a nice double-sided 45. This is Sesame Street and Catch a Groove. Also good old classics. It's just awesome, funky. Then here we go. This is another record that like I think a lot of people haven't really seen an original one around in a long time or ever. Probably most famous for Public Enemy. I remember one record place I was at, it was outside New Orleans, and like it was some guy's house, and everything was like really thin because there's records on both sides, which is the same as the story of this guy's house in Riverside, which is the same as the story of this guy's house in like Brazil. And like, where you're walking through this thin thing where you feel like one wrong tip and everything can fall on you and you will never be seen from again. And everybody has a story, because I think I've done that probably in myself probably like 15 or 20 times, where it's like you just, we want to reach up, but you don't want to be really careful because everything's going to come falling down on you. I mean, it just happens over and over again. I mean, we went everywhere for records in our time of even even before, like say like Jim Russell's in New Orleans, where before it was like all picked through, and like you're in the back and they have stoves on to keep you warm and shit. I mean, it's like, or like, yeah, man, it's like so many records. My life with Josh and shopping with Josh it's when we were both coming up, so we were really helping each other out. I wouldn't say that I knew more than him. I think he probably knew more than me, but we both had a pretty good knowledge of records. I remember one time we flew out to Texas together to go to the record fair, and I remember Well, I remember two things. I remember one thing was I had never been to a Hooters, and I wanted to check it out, but he wouldn't go, so I've still never been to a Hooters. And other than that, I think he was also, that was a trip where he was really trying to explain to me the joys of melatonin. But beyond that, the record part of it, I think our knowledge was, we started out probably a similar level of understanding. His increased more as my interest waned a little bit in buying records. I reached a point where I was like, I don't want to buy every record. I want to get all the gear that you can make the records with. And so my interest deviated slightly from that. So why I'm like stuck at whatever, under 10,000 records, and he's probably, I don't know where he is now. He's probably at 30 to 50, I imagine. Oh, here, let's start with this one. This is like a super classic, another break record actually, full of breaks that like pretty, I think it got repressed, but it's a pretty rare record. I don't know anything about them. I just know it's a hard record to find with a super sounding like drum break thing on it. But it's like, there's fans of it. I don't know the history of them. And this record right here, now this is not my rarest record ever, but kind of this record. If you're watching this, Josh, you know you want this still, right? I've never seen another one of these around, actually. I don't know if it's valuable or anything, but it's super rare. The most I've paid for a single record is somewhere between $300 and $500. It's probably somewhere around $4. The reason it's a little vague for me is I've definitely paid $3 in America, but I feel like I've paid $3 in Europe, which would be like $4.50 or $4. That's so something around there. The most money I've ever spent at one time on records, and like I don't buy collections, so I've never done like the Josh thing. Oh, here, let me take your whole collection. But the most I've ever spent on a record run, it's not that much, probably under 5,000, you know, probably somewhere in the $35,000 to $4,000 range, but I might have done that 2 or 3 days in a row, possibly. There was a time when I felt like I wanted to have all the crazy breaks and everything like that no one else had. But then there was another time where I realized now every time I do a record, someone throws out the record on some compilation or something, or there's a compilation. So I stopped worrying about it a little bit. That was the other thing that made me not really so record centric. It's like all these great records that like I went and looked for years or something to find and freak and whatever. And the next thing you know, someone puts out on a comp the next week. I'm like, I'm not digging that. Okay, here. Now this, you gotta have doubles. Because you know, otherwise you can't cut them. And if you know what this is, you know it's a pretty hard record to find. I found this in Riverside. I think it was called Baseline in Riverside. There was actually 6 of them there. I bought them all, but I'm just showing 2 right now to not show off. This record's very important because it has a song called Rocket in the Pocket. And there was a 12-inch of Rocket in the Pocket that existed, but it was cut at 45. And so you'd have to play it at 45. The album is very hard to find, but it's cut at 33. So if you played it at 45, it's the classic hip hop break, gotta rock it in my pocket, that, which I don't think very many people have ever seen, probably. Well, actually, Crate Digger people may have seen it, but you know. Then this is Funky Nassau. I don't know, I just brought this out there because it was in front of me. Nice, good classic break beat. You know, I think I got that in Oakland, but I don't remember where. This one is also, you know, it's a good one. You would think there was more of these around, but for some reason, it's really hard to find the original of this for some reason. I don't really understand why. You know, another great classic hip-hop history record. I don't think collecting vinyl is important, but I do feel like the format gives more justice to the music. And what I mean by that is there's a production involved with putting the record on and listening to it and dusting it off and all that stuff. It's a physical connection to the record, which I appreciate if I want to listen to a record. But the other part about this is like we're in an MP3, whatever, iTunes culture right now, and I use it too, but you just have a list of stuff. It just doesn't have the same romance. It's like if I pick this up and I go like, you know what I mean? Like, these people look interesting, and then I can read about them and everything. But even like their intention of art is this big, because even if you have a record cover now, it's at the best it's this big, and more likely it might be just a little stamp on a thing, and you just, the romance is just not there. Now, technically, listening to vinyl, does it sound better than an MP3? Probably. Does it sound better than a WAV file? It's debatable. It just depends. But the whole idea that you can put it on, feel there's a physical connection to the record, and just the production of putting, like, you know, you put a record on and you go like, okay, there's a needle physically touching the vinyl. It's transmitting the sound. It's so real. And like I said, quality-wise, maybe not quite as good as the higher end stuff on some levels, but the actual physical interaction in the field is better, I think. If Fuse can sponsor a Hooters trip, I'm going. I mean, like, it's reached a point where, like, I just feel like, I don't know, it's been so long that I need to go that I can't go unless something happens.